Our second sector expert today is Rafael Fassio. We all know that the water industry is tightly regulated. Procurement is often a barrier to innovation, and this is especially true in Brazil. But things are changing. Brazil enacted legislation designed to not only enable innovation, but actually to promote it, especially in the water industry. My friend and colleague, Dr. Chantal Kutzer, had a conversation with Rafael Fassio. Rafael is state attorney in the state of Sao Paulo, and he had lots more to tell us.
Rafael, it is wonderful to have you join the Water Action platform. I think my first question for you today is around what prompted the design of the innovation regulation within the public sector. Maybe you want to tell us a bit about where it all started.
Well, first things first, thank you so much for having me here, Chantal. And the design of procurement regulations is very interesting because it has to be, and often is, something very different from regular procurement itself. So here in Brazil, we do have very strict and formal procurement regulations since 1993. But in 2021, we had two laws that passed reforms that are very important in innovation procurement. So in what comes to the design of specific innovation procurement procedures, I would definitely highlight the Brazilian Startup Act, which was also enacted in 2021. And it is our first example of a challenge-based acquisition procedure here in Brazil, which is great news because public entities are waived in defining or describing technical specs of the object they're trying to purchase, and they're allowed to focus more on the problem that they're facing. So that solutions in the best fashion of open innovation can come from outside the organization. So private partners, startups, companies can provide great inputs on how you can solve those problems. And in the end of the day, that's the main criteria for for contract awards in the Startup Act procedure. So the problems are the main criteria for evaluation. So projects are evaluated based on how they best or not solve the problem behind the contracting procedure. So that's really important, as I mentioned, because it is our first procedure directed towards testing of innovative solutions in real environments with real people in real contexts, and it allows to testing for contracts up to 1.6 million reais, which is around 325 US dollars. To $325,000 US dollars. I apologize for the numbers. And if objectives are met, if it succeeded, so if the objectives put in the RFP, in the original RFP are met, you are allowed to have the same provider a new contract up to 8 million reais, which is about 1.5 million US dollars.
Can you tell me a bit about how you've gone about implementing this? It couldn't have been easy.
It is not, because as I mentioned, Brazil has a tradition of very strict and formal procurement regulations, which are often based in one single criteria, which is price, the most objective criteria you can have. And when you're talking about how you better solve a problem, it is obviously that you're going to apply some degree of subjectiveness into this evaluation procedure. So that is new for us as public attorneys, but also public entities are also struggling to implement this. But the good news is that we have several entities that are already using it for real life problems here in Brazil. We have a very important use and a very leading use case from Petrobras, our state-owned company in oil and gas industry, which has already several procedures under the Startup Act in very many different challenges, mostly related to the oil and gas industry. There's a very important lesson from policy and theory that focusing on the problem, number one lesson in design thinking, for example, putting users in the center, is very important. It's key to understand which type of procurement procedure are you going to need. So given and evidence shows that successful innovation procurement procedures in Europe and US and mainly, anywhere, they share in common a very in that study of the problem that was being faced before even considering to choose procurement procedures.
Thank you, Rafael, and thank you, Chantal. As Rafael pointed out, change is hard, especially in a conservative, regulated sector like ours. But his examples show that it can be done. As the Startups Law has gained traction in Brazil, so Rafael has been seconded into the World Economic Forum to streamline public procurement of AI solutions globally.